Hey guys, this is Justin, joined as always by the cute and lovable Corey for another episode of Star Wars Tapcaf Transmissions. And today we are tackling book one of the MedStar duology, Battle Surgeons. Corey, how are you?
I am great. How are you?
Good, good, good. What did I say my nickname was earlier on Twitter? The Noodle
Uh,
Merchant? Great
yeah,
Noodle Merchant or
Grand
something?
Noodle.
Yeah, is there any way that you can refer to me as Grand Noodle Merchant for the rest of this, or Blessed Noodle Merchant?
No, I'm actually not going to do that.
Okay, that's fine. So how are you doing, Corey? What's happened
I,
since the
al- I
last?
already answered that, but
Well, okay. What's happened since the last time we talked?
very little. This is actually our first time doing an episode only a week after the previous episode, so
Hmm.
there hasn't been a lot to change in our lives. This might be the first episode where there's more talking about the book than the random tangents we go on about unrelated stuff.
I somehow doubt that.
But yeah, we had a whole election, so
We had an
we can go into
election. We had a
that.
Star Wars trailer.
That's true.
Um, we had Blessed Noodles. I
Well,
had
actually,
Blessed
one
Noodles.
thing I'm I'm not calling you that.
Okay.
I urge everyone to not call him that. Just please, for the love of God, don't. But one thing that's happened since the last episode is we talked about some potential slight format changes that we're going to be trying out here. We did talk about in the early episodes how we'd be playing with the format a bit, seeing how it evolves, and trying to find what fits best for the show.
Mhm.
And I think some of the issues with the format we were going with did kind of come through in Courtship, the last episode we did,
Yeah.
where we're trying to find the right balance of summarizing the plot versus uh, talking about whatever topics come up from the book. Uh,
Yeah, we don't want like 3 hours of just us summarizing the book because it's just not very interesting.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, we're gonna try to do a brief summary at the beginning, and then we'll kind of move into more focused discussion. And that way, if you guys are watching live, you can also suggest discussion topics. I mean, we might ignore you, depending on how we're feeling, but it's possible.
yeah, we want to make sure people who didn't read the book can still follow what we're talking about, but we don't want to be like a replacement lower tier
Yeah.
audiobook where it's
Well,
like, and then this happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this
yeah.
happened, and that was it.
Yeah, you can always read the Wikipedia pages if that's what you're looking forward. But we're gonna try to focus more on themes and wacky moments and just really dive deep into some more nuanced issues rather than just, yeah, as Corey said, doing a straight plot by plot summary.
Hmm.
Because it did get kind of last episode, it did get kind of long because there is a lot of like, oh, then this happened, then this happened, this happened. Just wasn't that fun. We are also going to try, as we've been talking about, to cover some news or just some topics of discussion before the video. And for this one, I mean, the major thing is the episode 9 trailer, the final trailer for any mainline Star Wars movie until Disney goes back on that in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, it's the third time there's been a final Star
Right.
Wars mainline trilogy
Hmm.
trailer, and that's a complete lie. There's definitely going to be more.
Oh yeah. I mean, they paid $4 billion for it, and I believe they also stole George Lucas's soul. I think, um, which is not an easy process. That's what Twitter told me.
I'm not touching that.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, thoughts on the trailer, Corey?
I enjoyed it. I try not to get too much out of trailers in terms of expectations
Mhm.
uh, for how I'm going to feel about the actual movie. Uh, I'm more interested in the trailers as like hints of what we might see in terms of planets or ships or whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, but I've never come out of a trailer, had certain expectations for a movie from that, and had that reflected in how I actually felt about the movie once I've seen it. So,
I'd say Solo for me, maybe, because I didn't really like the Solo trailers, and I didn't really like the movie that much.
hmm,
Yeah, but no, I get what you mean. And thoughts on ships? I mean, there was lots to look at.
yeah, it was nice to see the Assault Frigate Mark II get some love. That's one you don't
Do
really
you
expect
actually
to
think
see in
that's
a
what it is?
100%.
Really? Are you? I can't tell if
No,
you're being
like
serious or not.
100. I'm 100% sure that's an assault frigate Mark II.
But doesn't it have like a weird like tower on it or something? Like in that picture, isn't there like
I
antenna or something coming
I'll
off it?
I'll send you a picture that we cut out
It's like the ugly
later,
assault
but
frigate Mark II, right? Like the weird retcon.
the
Well, it's not
Empire
really
at
a
War
retcon.
one.
Ugh, it's like one of the ugliest ships of all time.
Yeah, it didn't come directly from Empire at War. Like I mean, it was in Empire at War first, and then it was in like the Armada game, I think,
Right.
and referenced in a few other places. But the
I have a
it's made its
theory.
way to the movie, and good
Yeah.
job, Petroglyph. You made it. Ty
I have
Berzan, you're next.
yeah, the whole next movie is gonna be about how annoying it is to ward off corruption and have his shots go through your shields.
the
Um,
the corruption trilogy is next.
corruption trilogy. It's just Leia moving between planets and cleansing corruption. I have a theory though. Have you ever read the Thrawn comics?
The original Thrawn trilogy comics
Yeah,
or the
yeah,
new
yeah.
Thrawn
The
comics?
originals.
I think so. I've at least skimmed them.
Right. So assault frigates play really heavily in the Thrawn
Yeah.
trilogy, obviously. And there's like literally one panel where the assault frigate has like a rounded look, like it does in Empire at War. And I'm pretty sure when they were creating a ship, they just looked at that panel and was like, "That'll do."
When Petroglyph was,
Yeah, when Petroglyph was
I
doing
think you're giving them more credit than
it,
like the idea
they
that they
just
looked at
made
anything. I
this
don't
one
know that
round
that's
boy.
true because the Tartan patrol cruiser was
Yeah,
supposed to be either a Carrack or a Lancer. It's definitely referenced as a Carrack in some places in the coding, but then it
it kind of
became the
has a.
Tartan.
I can see how it could have started off as a Lancer, funny enough, because the Lancer has those little fins at the back.
Yeah,
And
but the Tartan is like a really disproportionately skewed
mhm,
Carrack, where the front was
yeah,
just made smaller. The engine block kind of looks like a Carrack, but
what a mess. How have they not? How is there not more outrage about this? I mean, it's only been 15 years, right? Or
13.
16, 13?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Wow.
like today is the 13th anniversary of Forces of Corruption. This
Wow.
week, I
So this
think
is
it came
not.
out late October.
This isn't our Halloween special. This is our Forces of Corruption special.
Yeah,
Okay. I heard on the Star Wars show too that the Colossus from Star Wars Resistance might be in there somewhere.
yeah. I've seen some people looking through the fleet picture, in
Mhm.
particular, trying to find it, which I'm not convinced yet, but
Yeah, I'm not convinced either. I do have a little problem though. I'm kind of annoyed, and this is kind of something stupid to be annoyed about, but they did kind of just take several models that there shouldn't be more than one ship of and copied it a bunch of times. Like Han's freighter from The Force Awakens appears in that fleet shot like four or
mhm.
five times. And like it would have been really cool if there was just one of it because it's like, oh, it's the actual freighter. But now it's like, oh, there's just a bunch of them.
Well, most ships are mass produced. I don't think. Were you
True.
thinking that Han like special ordered that freighter?
No, it seems like a really random and old, I would have liked it if it was just one, 'cause then you're like, "Okay, that's actually Han's ship," instead of like,
Maybe.
"Oh, that's actually a digital asset they had ready to go."
I mean, I could see that more with being annoyed that there are more YT-1300s everywhere or something, but
Mhm.
because that seems like something they wouldn't do, because then they
Yeah.
could have a shot of a YT-1300 blowing up, like,
Mhm. Like, "Oh my
oh god,
god,
they blew up the
our
Falcon, and then the
heroes." Yeah.
Falcon flies in.
Um, apparently or sorry, I was just tagged on this on Twitter right before we started recording. The
Breaking news
posters
are happening now.
This is breaking and very important. The poster shows not only an Imperial 1 Star Destroyer, but also an Imperial 2.
Hmm.
If so, I guess there's gonna be ISD-2s in the movie as well.
Maybe even some Tectors. Are
Wow.
the cannons that would otherwise be blocking uh the hangars, are those Tectors? These are all burning
They
questions.
could be, I guess. I guess.
Yeah.
There we go. Hmm, interesting. Yeah, I like the trailer too, though. I thought it was pretty good. The movie seems like it's gonna be very blue. There's a lot of blue in the latter half.
That's what lens flares show up best against. So
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Oh, also, I was in the Star Wars show this week. Not in the reaction. There was like a reaction to the trailers. Not that I was playing what's it called? Fallen Order. Well,
right,
Anthony Carboni was playing Fallen Order, and you can see my head in the background.
nice. You finally made it. I'm so
We
proud
made
of
it.
you.
Yeah. Yeah, we made it. So, should we move on, or is there anything else you'd like to talk about for news? Any
Uh,
other aspects of the trailer you'd like to discuss?
I think we've both discussed the trailer pretty in depth on our channels. I don't know that I have much to add on it now, unless you have
Yeah.
any
No,
final
not really.
thought.
Nope.
Yeah, if people want to see our more expanded thoughts on that, I did like the first time I watched it. I recorded my reaction for that on my
Oh,
channel.
nice.
I tried to not get spoiled for the whole day, which
Mhm. Oh, you didn't get to watch it right away. You had to wait.
yeah, I was watching the election coverage and when it came out, so I was like seeing tweets come up about it. I was like, no,
Mhm.
I'm recording myself doing this.
Right.
I'm not watching this until tomorrow.
The same thing happened with The Force Awakens too.
They already
It
made a
was Mo
second one.
The Force Awakens as well.
Oh,
Um, it was Monday Night Football and the day of the Canadian election. Like, I think it was that would have been Force Awakens, right? 4 years ago?
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause I remember I was at yeah,
because
me and
Last Jedi
Kelsey
was
and I
2017, Force Awakens
yeah,
2015.
yeah, and the election was
15.
2015, yeah,
Yeah.
so hmm.
Do you have any thoughts about the rumored Thrawn live action TV show? Do you
Yeah,
buy
I
it?
don't know. No, I don't buy it.
Me neither.
Not yet.
I'd love to believe it. I don't believe
Yeah,
it yet.
it would be a good idea. I mean, like, Thrawn's such a thing is, like, we're all like, "Oh, yeah, Thrawn, we love Thrawn, Thrawn's the best." Like, if you ask the average Star Wars fan,
Yeah.
even the average hardcore movie Star Wars fan, like, my friends are, like, super into the Star Wars movies, or at least, like, at one point in their life they were. I don't
Yeah.
think any of them would know who Thrawn is besides maybe that he's an alien and or, like, an Imperial.
Yeah. Like I have I think I mentioned him on the podcast before, but my roommate is the biggest Star Wars fan I know in my real life.
Mhm.
And he's aware of Thrawn, but like largely through Rebels, I think,
Yeah,
and lore videos and that kind of thing. So uh
that's true. Rebels definitely did help.
yeah, so like I could see him getting pulled in that way, but I don't think
Mhm.
they do anything that like adapts or heavily relies on other media for that.
Yeah,
But
no, I feel it. Although, I mean, to be honest, I'm pretty surprised that even the Ghost was Skywalker trailer. Like, I kinda just assumed JJ just, like, doesn't care about that stuff, but I guess he was just like, "Alright, give me some ships," and then someone was like, "Oh, we got this Ghost model
yeah,
from Rogue One."
but well, I think one of the benefits of having the story group though is that they're all heavily involved in all the projects, so it's less like Rebels
Mm,
was made by this one team over here. You have
yeah.
like Dave Filoni on that, and then uh, they're all consulting with it. So it's like, oh, if you can work this in, if you're looking for ships, you can work
Mhm.
this in. It doesn't necessarily mean like Hera's going to have a big part in the
Yeah.
plot or anything, but it is still cool that we have a situation where we're going to get uh, more of
Yeah.
those kinds of crossovers where it makes sense.
Mhm.
I'm looking to see the return of the shoe from the asteroid field and the army man from the executor, but I don't know if we're going
Yeah.
to get that.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's also though, like, Ryan Johnson talked about, like, how he had like total freedom to do whatever he wanted. So I feel like if the directors if they didn't want to rely on the story group, they could do
Yeah.
so. But it's also like a pretty available resource to them.
Yeah. It's less about like relying on it, more that if they're looking for something to use, the options are a bit more clear to them. Or if there's something in like reviews of the script or something that they feel like it could work, then there's people to make those suggestions.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
a bit better than like the rabbit from the Marvel comics being made by someone and then no one ever hears of it again.
You mean Jackson?
Yeah, that one.
I don't know why people focus on Jackson. There's also cats. I forget the name of the cat. There's a whole arc about a rebel pilot who's a cat.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah,
Jackson's just the
he's fun.
He's the one that, like, when we get to the Avengers Endgame style final battle, where you can have it's the Duck in that scene, uh, who's like from one of the old comics.
Yeah.
We're gonna get that, and it's gonna be Jackson.
Yeah. When the world between worlds opens up and people are just falling out, and it's like Jackson, the slime racers from I forget which book that even is, but
Well, if you've seen the leaks for Rise of Skywalker, it actually ends with Abeloth coming out and eating everyone.
that was a bold move, I thought.
Yeah, so well, plenty to talk about with Rise of Skywalker coming out, possibly even a Tapcaf Transmissions edition
Ooh.
entirely about Skywalker's Rising.
Mm.
Maybe.
Or a Skywalker.
Well, we don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities.
I think back to the original point though with the Thrawn. There's so many like live action series in the works right now. We've got Mandalorian, we've got Cassian, we've got Obi-Wan. Like I
Mhm.
think they've got to see how like people are reacting to these. Like if I think they were
Yeah.
smart to put the Mandalorian first. Even more so than I think like Obi-Wan has a lot of like people are interested just because Ewan is such an awesome actor and Obi-Wan's such a cool character.
Mhm.
But like I think the Mandalorian story is a lot more compelling.
Yeah. And I think part of it is that they've probably got like mountains and mountains of workshopped ideas there, and we don't know how long any of them's going to run for, right? So there
Mhm.
could be some series that are intended to be multi-year arcs, kind of like
Yeah.
Rebels was, or the Clone Wars was. Clone Wars were clone,
Yeah.
whatever. But then you have something like Resistance, where they had like the 2 years plotted for that.
Mhm.
For Obi-Wan, who knows how many episodes we're going to get of that. So it might be a
Yeah.
thing where we get a bunch of really short shows, and you have like a
Yeah.
10 episode
Which
Thrawn
is
show or
probably what the
something.
Obi-Wan will be like.
Yeah,
I imagine that will be a pretty short run.
yeah.
The
Unless it's like
Mandalorian, yeah.
the thing that the Obi-Wan show could be is what I've wanted forever, which is a Star Wars sitcom. So who cares if like Obi-Wan doesn't have much to do in that time period? It's like Obi-Wan and his roommate Jawa get
Played by
into a bunch
Roseanne Barr.
of oh god.
You can't say that about Jawas, Roseanne. I was gonna never mind.
No,
I'm gonna
no. No,
stop
no, no,
myself right
no.
now. You know, yeah.
I know where you were going.
It was too on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I think Mandalorian. I mean, they're already. I think I don't know if they're filming season 2 yet, but they're definitely doing like at least pre-production on it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I expect that one
so
has like the most room to go on for a
totally,
long time out of everything we've heard. Like we know
yeah,
how the Cassian show would eventually have to end.
right. And
Same
that's
with
probably the one
Obi-Wan.
That's the one that kind of a head scratcher to me. Like I don't know. I like a lot of the people like the main problems with Rogue One that a lot of people had were that the characters weren't that memorable.
Mhm.
I liked Cassian, but like in K2SO,
So
but like yeah.
Rogue One is close to being my favorite Star Wars movie. Uh, and the reason that that didn't bother me as much
Hmm.
was because, in the context of the movie, the rebellion was supposed to be the character. The way I saw it, the way
Yeah,
I
yeah,
watched.
yeah.
So I don't know that it's just I don't think that it's like Cassian or K2SO or even Jin that was like bad characters. It's just the point of the movie wasn't necessarily to explore
Yeah.
them that way. And
Mhm.
I don't have any concerns about whether or not Cassian can carry a show or anything. I think that'll be fine, just
Yeah.
based on that concern. Like, there's plenty of other reasons it could end up being bad or something, but I don't think that
Mhm.
that's anything I'm worried about.
Yep, fair enough. I'm looking for suits on Coruscant.
Hmm.
Maybe about Noir Event. Sound good or what?
I'd watch that. I don't.
Yeah, me
Would
too.
that be a suit, or are we just talking like Law and Order?
Um, I
Get
think
Dick
Noir
Wolf
was
out
in
here
private
and
practice, wasn't he? So more of a suits, I think. Okay. But yeah, guys, let us know whether you're listening on podcast or watching on YouTube. Let us know what you thought of the Rise of Skywalker trailer, what you think of this series and a potential Thrawn series. Of course, if you are listening on podcast, the best way to reach out to us is tapcaftransmissions@gmail.com. I'm sad to say I don't think we got any emails this week, did we, Corey?
No, didn't have quite the same lead time on the
Yeah.
episodes here, so
Yeah. Well, it's all right.
so well, if you guys are listening here and have any questions as we go through the discussion, make sure to leave them in the chat, and we will get to them at the end. Or I guess with a new format, maybe in the middle of the podcast. This is exciting.
Oh, it's gonna be a mess. I guess we did kind of miss the ball too on or drop the ball on a Halloween episode because it
Missed
literally
the ball,
fell on
dropped the
Halloween.
boat.
Yeah, because like we could have done
Death Troopers.
Death Troopers, or
well,
I don't know.
There's like 700 more books to cover, so maybe next year. Because we technically the next episode we were going to be doing would have been Halloween normally, but you have parental duties on Halloween.
Yes.
So
the child.
Kumar saying no face cam, Corey. I'm recording face cam in my version, but I can't beam my face cam to Justin for his streams.
I could give you the stream key, but anyway, let's move on with the book. People are waiting. We're 21 minutes in. This is like Return of the Jedi, where nothing happens until 35 minutes.
Well, when we have a news segment before the show, this was like a
True.
This was like a thing that we should have known was going to happen.
And this is actually a kind of short news segment too. I think some will be longer than this. But anyway, let's start with the book. MedStar 1, Battle Surgeons, part 1 of a duology. This book came out in 2003, which is interesting because it's not only before the Clone Wars TV show, but before Revenge of the Sith. And I think in some aspects that really shows. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. The premise of the book basically is that it's basically the life on a RIMSU, they call it, which is a
RMSU, Republic Medical Surgical Unit.
Isn't it RIMSOO?
Yeah, that's a phoneticization. That's
is it? Okay.
Yeah, because it is it's an initial. It's an acronym for initialism.
So yeah, Republic, whatever. And they're on this planet called Drongar.
Yes.
And it's one thing that I like is it's like literally completely backwater. Like this, they're fighting for some pretty small stakes here. Basically, this planet has what's it called again? The
Boda. Yeah, and this is basically the Back to War, but the Boda War.
Yeah.
So,
and Boda has it has different like medicinal or chemical properties depending on the species that ingests it or takes it. Like they mentioned that one of the local huts, he smokes it and he basically gets high. It seems humans use it as an antibiotic, and just a ton of different species use it for different reasons. And unlike something like spice, it doesn't really have a lot of negative drawbacks. So the Separatists and the Republic are basically fighting, but because the Boda is so valuable, it's kind of like a long, drawn-out ground campaign because they're not using as much heavy artillery. They're not bombing from orbit. It's basically slowly trying to capture territory. But that's not really important because we spend most of our time on this RIMSU with the surgeons and Bariss, the Jedi Padawan.
Yeah, and this is a book that you hadn't read before, right?
Yeah, I've never read this one before, and I really, really liked it.
Yeah, when I was first getting into Star Wars stuff in the early 2000s, this was, as far as I can remember, my favorite Clone Wars book series. So this and its sequel, which we'll be doing in 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you don't get much of the top-down view of the war. Instead, it's a lot more of a character study and like how do these people identify or define themselves, and it kind of talks about that with clones, with droids, through I-5, through Bariss and how she sees herself. And it's actually kind of interesting with Bariss because there's her talking about like how she fits in with the Jedi Order, how she sees herself in her relationship with the dark side, when there ends up 4 or 5 years later being the episodes of the Clone Wars cartoon where Varys does get to experience the dark side a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah, and I mean, it kind of retroactively works pretty well because she kind of does have like a complicated. I guess all Jedi sort of have a complicated
Yeah.
relationship. Um, but yeah, in hindsight, it works really well. But like you said, it's interesting. It's almost like a. It's a little more. It's not. It's not academic. It's not really. It's still not really high literature, but it is a bit. It is a bit more like sort of literature-y than most
Yeah.
Star Wars books because plot doesn't drive the story. Very little actually happens, at least in this book. I mean, there is stuff there, but like at the end of the story, besides for one thing, not that much has changed. It's more about perspectives and like debates and stuff like that, which is I don't know,
Yeah.
is a really nice change for a Star Wars book, actually.
Yeah, the basically when they started making the book, they were trying to get Star Wars MASH, which was an old
Mhm.
military medical show.
Yeah,
And I think they did a pretty good job kind of matching that feel, but I
I mean,
was
they're
thinking when
basically
I
in
was reading.
Vietnam.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking when I was reading it that it's probably the least pulpy of the books that we've read.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
so.
like, which isn't to say that it's inherently better, just that
No,
it doesn't take that same approach. But
right. I mean, there's conversations that don't end with somebody jumping in a starship, like,
yeah, very
um,
rarely. Like, if a starship's involved, it's basically just so that someone can crash on it and they can talk
yeah,
about how people are coping with that rather than
right.
that being the event in and of itself.
Regarding the whole Vietnam thing, though, the planet is like almost designed to be that way, just like because of the way it limits like space combat and stuff like that because of the spores that are around the planet. So really, you have like gunships kind of dropping in and out, like helicopters. The planet's described as very, very humid, like
Hmm.
always humid, um, and yeah. So it is kind of, I mean, a very clear inspiration in that sense.
Yeah. Uh, so do you want to go through uh, like we did talk about how we wanted to change up the format a little bit, but
Mhm.
this is kind of an interesting book to do that on because uh, it is a book where like the overall plot, not a huge amount actually happens.
Yeah,
It's more the character development. So do you want to start
yeah,
off with just talking a little
sure.
bit about the main characters?
Yeah. So
And
we've got.
actually, before we do the spy, do you know who that
No, I
was?
don't know who it is.
Okay, so
No.
uh,
My guess is, anyway. So there's four doctors on this Rimzu, but we only really focus on two: Joss and Zan. Both are Corellian, well, from the Corellian system, which is kind of funny. Zan's in. He's a what's it called?
Iridonian Zabrak, I
Z- z-
think, or
well,
he's a
he's
Zabrak.
a
I don't know if he's
Zabrak, but
Iridonian.
from no, yeah, he's from Talus or
Yeah,
Tralus, one of the two. And Joss is also a Corellian. They're the two surgeons. Zan is kind of like he's like a really talented musician, but kind of forced into service, I guess, because well, musicians aren't really needed. It's the height of the Clone Wars. Joss is like he's like a career surgeon. He's seems to be a pretty good one. They also have I don't even know how you say her name. Talk, I guess
I
she's like
called her Tolk.
Tolk. She's a nurse that is frequently helping them out, and then they're basically struggling because they're in this backwater world. They're not getting that many supplies from the Republic. They're always short on medical droids. Everything's always breaking. They don't have that much in the way of supplies. Um, and then Barriss comes. She's still a Padawan at this point, but she is helping heal. She's got and not just, like, in a Jedi way, she does do some Jedi healing, but often it's just like yeah, she'll be in there with, like, a scalpel,
Yeah,
uh, replacing organs or whatever else.
and we do get a bit of an indication about her real mission. She mentioned, like, she
Yeah,
briefly alludes to it being looking into missing Boda
yeah.
uh, treatment stuff, but we very rarely focus on that. Anything with her is more about
Mhm.
uh, how she's approaching becoming a Jedi, how she feels about how she fits in with the Order,
Yeah,
and trying to deal with her anger towards Foji, which
Mm,
is the martial arts instructor.
yeah, he's just a bad dude. So other than that, besides for that, the other main character, I guess, would be Den. He's basically a reporter. And he's on base a lot. Yeah, I guess he's almost like an observer as much as a reporter. Um,
Yeah.
and then besides for that, we have Philba the Hut. He does lots of stuff on the base. He kind of manages supplies largely. The Admiral kind of in orbit because they do have the MedStar is the name of the ship in orbit, and his name
Mhm.
is Blade, is how they call it. That's what they pronounce it in the audiobook.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's I-5 the droid, and basically we'll talk about him later
And we
some
also
more.
have Chloe Merritt, the base psychiatrist.
Oh
Who,
yeah, he's another horse,
yeah,
some sort of horse. Yeah,
I think a different kind of horse than the
yeah. He's not
than
a
Runt, but
yeah. Runt is a I forget. I did a whole video on him, but yeah.
but yeah. So Merritt and Tulk are actually both to some level empaths. So there's three of the main characters who are uh, able to sense the thoughts and feelings of everyone around them,
Yeah.
which is kind of a big deal when they're playing as much Sabak as they do,
Yeah.
and also when it's so heavily driven by the emotional state of the characters.
I'm pretty sure Tolk is the same species as Face. Or not sorry, not the same species. They're both human, but I'm pretty sure she's the same she's got the same background as Face.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure from Rogue Squadron.
Well, it's actually something that comes up a lot in the book, talking about even when someone is human, a lot of Star Wars books will just say they were
Yeah.
human. This
Yeah.
book makes a point with every character of talking about their specific background,
Mhm.
which does play into the whole identity theme as well.
Mhm.
So because with Jos, how did
Mhm.
you?
I said Jaws.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with that. So, how Joss's main or the main crux of Joss's development is his romantic life and how he ends up feeling towards Tolk,
Mhm.
even though his society back home wouldn't really. She would be seen as exter or outside of
Yeah.
what's acceptable for him to marry. Uh, but like every character gets their uh,
Kind
origin
of
mentioned.
yeah.
And when clones do come up, it's almost exclusively in the context of the characters trying to decide, like, or
Yeah.
trying to figure out how they relate to everyone else, or if they are their own individual people, or if they're just these basically machines for war. But then even the machines they have, I-5, who is my favorite character in the book,
Yeah, he's great.
uh, even the machines are their own people.
Yeah. Regarding humanity or being human, I guess Barriss is always referred to as a human, and she's
Mm,
technically not later on. The later lore, she's a near human, but like I think there's a very distinct difference between near humans, like human offshoot races, and
mhm.
then like different human cultures which have evolved. Like Tolk is a human, but Barriss is not. She's a near
Yeah.
human. That's not really important, I guess, but just before I forgot it.
Yeah, there were a few continuity things that are
Yeah.
incorrect in the book. Like the main one I noticed was at some point, uh, Joss mentions the Stark hyperspace war being 5,000
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
before.
It's like a
It's like
thousand, isn't it?
50. It's like 50 years
50? Oh,
before.
okay.
It's like Plo Koon was in it.
Yeah, that's
Tyvoka.
right.
It was a lot of people who also ended up being in the Clone Wars. So
Right.
he was off a little bit with that. There was the
I mean, the
Great
way
Hyperspace War, which they talk about later, but that's different.
right. The portrayal of clones generally is quite a bit different than what we see in the Clone Wars as
Hmm.
well. Like the degree of uniformity in this book is way higher later on, because this was pre-Revenge of the Sith too. So
Hmm.
like clones are said to look exactly the same, like indistinguishable. When like the Clone Wars, especially, it's like yeah, they start the same, but usually like there will be a degree of difference both in personality and in looks. Like some
Yeah.
clones will have different color eye. Well, I
But we're
think
also talking about the clones in this book are from the perspective of the
That's
character,
true.
usually
That's true.
Joss, who is basically coming to terms with the fact that they aren't all the same person.
Yeah.
Like how shittily he behaves towards
Yeah. Seeing
914.
914, yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, your buddy's dead. I just threw him in the dumpster out back, is basically
Yeah.
how he goes about that.
Yeah. One thing that's interesting too, like that the canon changed from Legends is that, and I guess we'll talk about this a bit more later, is how they dealt with like clone loyalty and stuff. Because canon eventually changed it, so the clones did Order 66 because of a chip they have implanted in their heads.
Yeah.
When Legends was just like, no, they just followed orders. So that is kind of like, I guess maybe not from Joss's perspective, there's not a difference, but um, because yeah, like he says, he basically sees them as like meat droids, basically.
Yeah.
Someone says that, I forget who. It might be
Well,
him.
yeah, I think it's him and Zan kind of go back and forth on it, but like, even if there's like chips or something to compel certain behaviors, which I can't remember. I think that might have been a thing in Legends as well. But it depended
Think,
on which
yeah,
individual sources you were going by.
yeah, because the
But
Revenge of the Sith novelization is just like,
yeah,
yeah,
because
but
it
the
kind of
Clone
needed
Wars
to
added it in.
explain. Yeah,
Yeah,
but the even with that, like there were certain behaviors that are forced by that kind of thing, but there was still the individuality with them all. But yeah, this was probably one of the first books or any bits of media to really go into that
right.
issue, partially because of how early it came out
Yeah, yeah.
in the timeline. There wasn't really much else there could be. My copy has a timeline of everything that had come out for the Clone Wars at that point.
It would have been a year after, right?
2004, and
Oh,
Attack of
okay.
the
I thought
Clones
it
was
was
in 02.
okay.
But like this has just Boba Fett books.
Well, it had the Darth Maul stuff because that's
Yeah,
obviously heavily referenced with I5.
the Clone Wars video game with the Dark Reaper that had come
I
out.
love that game.
Um, Clone Wars 1, The Defensive Camino by Dark Horse. Another Boba Fett book. Clone Wars 2, Victories and Sacrifices, more Dark Horse.
Were those
Shatterpoint had come out.
the
Legacy of
Boba
the
Fett when
Jedi.
he's a kid book? Because I remember reading
Yeah,
those.
like
Yeah,
the Young Readers series.
yeah, I read
I
those
think.
when I
See
was a
if I can
kid.
get this. Might be too. I mean, no one watching live right now can see it, but whatever. But yeah, so for the characters then, you said you had some theories on
Well,
the
okay.
spy.
At first, I thought for sure it was Tolk, but I had to look her up to see if she survived. So I know it's not her. My theory is that it's some sort of shapeshifter. At first, I thought it was someone shapeshifting as a droid,
Mm-hmm.
just because of the way that people were talking about, like his eyes and like how he had like kind of humanity in his eyes, basically. Like no one ever saw a droid like expressed like that. But other than that, I don't know. I think it's a living I think it's some sort of shapeshifter. Um, I guess looking at this list, I don't think it's Den because we get too many perspective, like first person perspective scenes with him. Someone who hates the Republic. Yeah, I don't know. I have no
Okay,
idea.
well, we'll talk about that next time. I won't spoil it for you or for
Yeah.
anyone else who hasn't read the next book yet. But uh,
Actually, looking at the list, the only one that leaves. Yeah,
I mean, it's not necessarily someone on the character list we have. Those were just the.
yeah. I'm just thinking who it could be. Like it's I don't think any of the main characters. Um I was just thinking about all of them. Um if it were because one of the things is there are a lot of like people who can kind of read minds. So it's I feel like it's got to be one of them. or else they would have been discovered. I don't even remember the name, but the horse guy would be my best guess. Just looking at is that
Clo?
Chloe?
Yeah, that's Clo.
That would be my best guess, but I'm not really. I still think it's a shapeshifter. So
It's actually Zam Wessel comes back and
beautiful.
Yeah,
should we move on with the sort of plot summary? Let me let Remy out. She's being.
Sure, so I'll get started on the plot then. But so we show up on Drongar. There's the surgery going on. The first one. Those are kind of the action scenes for the book when they're in the operating theater. The OT, which was weird to read in the book so many times. Like, what are we doing in the original trilogy? But that's when we're introduced to Joss, to Zan. I think Tolk is in there as well.
Yeah.
Then the next chapter, Bariss gets there. We're introduced to Admiral Blade, which is like literally the, no pun intended, edgiest name you could think of for this guy. Yeah. And there's not a lot of cross between Blade's plot and the rest of the character's plot for the rest of the book.
No, there's really not.
Blade is he's involved in a lot of deals with the Black Sun. He's smuggling out some Boda and working with Philba the Hutt, who's the quartermaster on Rimsu 7, which is the surgical unit that our main cast is part of. So that's the only real connection there. So
and there's isn't there 40 Rimsus on the planet, they said?
I don't remember. Yeah. But sounds right. But
because it just kind of just to kind of drive home how unimportant
this is like backwater everything. None of this really matters in the context of the war. It's more about the character study of what someone in this situation just looks like when there's millions of them probably across the galaxy. But with Blade's plot, it kind of just goes into him getting nearly caught. The Black Sun representative he ends up meeting, Mathel, is trying to get more of a cut for himself. And he presents himself as part of the Black Sun, actually wanting more of the cut as a whole. So Blade kills them. Another agent comes named Caird or Maird? Caird.
Caird, yeah, with a K.
And so
I thought for a second that he was the same species as Vergere.
Yeah, I thought it might actually be Vergere.
Me too. I was like,
wait, is she in
wait. It's like the timing on that doesn't really work out.
Yeah. And then I thought maybe it's the Hyper Chicken from Futurama. But turned out to be neither of those. So Blade ends up going to a meeting with Philba to talk about what's going on. At this point, Dender, the new Celestian, has kind of tracked down Philba's dealings, and Philba gets poisoned. Blade tries to take credit for that when talking to Caird. Caird talks to the spy, Len/Column, and finds out that actually no, Blade didn't kill him, so Blade just dies. So anything with his plot that you?
Not really. I mean, the thing that's interesting about him is we'll talk about this later, but characters all have their own kind of Joss and him especially, they're kind of grappling with they've got sort of this pre-designed
plan.
Yeah. But the funny thing about Blade is he talks about his planet and how he wants how great it is. But whenever he dreams and really thinks about the future, it's always on Coruscant. It's always being in a big Coruscant sky tower with power over millions and millions of people. Yet he talks about his home planet and says anyone who's been there once would understand why nobody ever wants to leave and why basically it's the greatest place ever. And then he's like, I need to get all this wealth so I can, make a name for myself and then maybe even make my way to Coruscant and have a big sky tower and have power for trillions of people. So it's he's not even being honest with himself, really. And it's the
Yeah.
same. We'll see that again with Joss later.
But I think the kind of key difference between him and Joss is that throughout the entire book, Blade's motivations stay entirely how other people will see him, and he dies. So I think it's kind of clear what our opinion on him is kind of supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly. Especially where he already has a measure of power too, and I mean he's not a small fry. He's an admiral.
Yeah.
He's like a shit tier admiral, but he's still an admiral.
Yeah, shit tier admiral on a backwater world who's very upset by that fact. And he kind of wants to do anything to show that he needs to be on the front lines. He's the best admiral the Republic has, damn it.
Yeah, but yet at the same time, he's like skimming a lot of the BOTA from the shipments.
No, let's not hold him to too high of a standard here, Justin.
Yeah.
Sorry, Holy Noodle Master. Whatever that.
Blessed.
Sorry.
One thing I didn't realize too was I don't think are Celestins always described as being so short.
No. Okay. This is a thing that shows up in like half of sources, even though like in the movies they're not really that short.
Certainly on the new canon movies, because we see Nine Num standing up and he's
and I don't know where it came from, but it gets perpetuated a lot, and then Empire at War does it as well. So I thought I thought they were always short before, and even in the book, there are a few places where Den is described as being like almost normal height, but then at the start he's got to walk up a ramp to get to the bar.
Yeah, and he like talks about being under someone's chest height and stuff.
Yeah, and the kid in the story at the end treating him like a
like a
child.
Looks like a child, basically. Yeah.
So
that was really weird because I always imagined Celestin as being like pretty hardy and like large, like
they're
not
like I don't think they're I don't think they're like super
like a
tall.
Chadra fan.
Yeah, they get portrayed by like that a lot, but it doesn't check out with most of the original sources, at least.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, just a weird little, just strangeness that you see sometimes.
Yeah. So that, I think that kind of covers most of what happens with Blade. He's not really I didn't find him that compelling.
No, I'm not either. I just enjoyed that kind of the fact that he's not even honest with himself with what he wants. I thought that was pretty fun. He works
as a foil for the rest, but he's not really the main attraction.
He's another near human too, and he's I forget what species is he again? He's like a Sikaean, right? And he's very strong. He's like basically he's got better muscle. He's like an ape basically. Like he's got better like a ligament structure and more muscles. He's just a lot stronger and a lot faster than most humans. And he's big on hunting, as it seems like his entire culture is, because he talks about being descended from like these warriors, almost kind of like how Joss talks about like his family.
It's still into this this theme of like societal expectations for who he's supposed to be, rather than finding his own identity. And like Chloe very explicitly calls it out with Joss, is like, this is your family's expectations or your family's traditions, but are they yours? And for Blade, he kind of does everything he can to make sure they are his.
Yeah, exactly. So he dies, and then after that, it's I guess what's the plot after that? I guess.
Well, for him, nothing. But
nothing.
We can jump back around to the start and get to our actual cast here.
Yeah, I mean, besides for that, like in the book, the only real thing that happens is, I guess, the fighting sort of heats up, and the Rimzu is forced to, the line gets pushed back.
Well, it's not even that the fighting heats up; it's just that there was a small engagement closer to where they were.
Yeah, that's true.
Because the fighting in the book is Bariss kills a battle droid, and then they're fleeing from an assault. So
it's not even like they're fleeing that desperately.
It's just like a routine evacuation, and their one transport gets hit by a stray particle cannon or something.
Yeah.
and we end up losing Zan for that. But
I'm not gonna lie, the part where when Joss is outside and they get attacked by the super battle droid and there's a big explosion, I was actually pretty upset because I thought that the whole Rimzu was blown up, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like I was like, "The book just took a turn," but but no, thankfully.
we cut to Obi-Wan and Anakin having to investigate.
well, well, I mean, like him and Barriss would have still been alive, so
I guess.
yeah. But I get so yeah. After that, are we want to talk about what happens? I guess at the very end, like the character we lose.
No, because we haven't really talked about the
Okay.
rest of the plot for the rest of the characters yet.
Okay.
But yeah, so we have the surgery we covered a little bit, but that's kind of the
Mhm.
action scenes for the book
Yeah.
are the rush of the medical transports. But the first really relevant thing that happens is when they're all in the bar and Dender finds them all. And my main takeaway from this is that security is incredibly lax.
Yeah. I kept wondering too why he's free reign of like a military
Yeah.
installation.
It's not even that just that like they were willing to talk to him. It's that they'd tell him basically anything and they invited him for a tour of the base that they were giving the new medical staff. Like, "Oh,
Mhm.
we got to show Bariss what's going on. Why don't you come with us and look at everything?"
Yeah. Exactly. Um. Yeah. I mean, like a war. There's definitely a room for a war reporter, but this is a little different.
Yeah, but we get soon after Barriss gets initiated and Den gets
Mhm.
all the state secrets,
Mhm.
we hear about Foji for the first time with his Terraskasi match, uh, and Barriss like puts a bet on him, knowing that he'd actually beaten a Jedi before,
Mhm.
uh, who could cut himself off from the Force, which was supposed to be a big deal that he wasn't using it in the matches, but then Barriss does it like 3 times in the rest of the book.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really match up with what they're trying to put forward there.
No.
But
Um. Sorry, I just lost sound for a second. Are you still there?
yes, I'm still there.
What was the last thing you said?
I don't remember.
We
Yeah,
were on
they meet
on the
Foji and
right,
the
and
Jedi that can cut himself off from the Force, and
right,
by
which
that
is like
Varys just means not using it.
yeah,
But
it's like he doesn't, I guess, necessarily cut himself. I don't know. It's Star Wars is weird about that because in
yeah,
some books it's like really easy to cut yourself off for the Force, but then in like especially in like NJO and Legacy of the Force, it's like making yourself small is like this kind of big thing that you got to
yeah.
practice really really hard
But the
on.
way she's describing it, it's like he just didn't use the Force during the
Yeah,
fight,
exactly,
and she's clearly capable of doing that every time
exactly.
as well. So I don't know what the
Yeah,
deal there is, but
yeah. And he's
so he
basically
doesn't believe in
this
the Force,
yes, and
which
she does a little parlor trick to him basically, and she's
yeah
like, "Shouldn't have done that. Should not have done that."
holds the towel up, and then he thinks that it's like Chris Angel mind freak or something. Like,
Mhm,
oh, this is a rigged towel. You got to
mhm.
do more than that to fool me. But
Like,
they talk
moving
about
his
that a
hands
lot.
below and above.
Yeah, like they talk about how even Joss doesn't believe in the Force or anything. Uh, so even at this point, when the Jedi Order is like at its height, there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who just wouldn't be exposed to it because they're super rare.
Yeah,
But
and Joss picks it up, and I'm like, "Ugh, put that down." Like, it's a sweaty towel.
look for
Um,
strings attached.
yeah. There's just and then after that, there's really just a bunch of I mean, there were the surgeons are worked hard, and there's one scene in particular that's pretty brutal.
Yeah,
The one where they lose basically everyone, and that's a
yeah.
pretty the book doesn't shy away from, like, descriptions of gore or anything. I mean, it is in a medical sense, certainly, but, one of the main characters has a pretty I mean, it's not brutal in how he dies, but, like, it's painless from his perspective, but, I mean, the way it's described is kind of brutal and,
There's the
lots
guy
of,
that's
like
missing all of his limbs and his face is burned off.
yeah, and there's, like, one guy who's, like they talk, like, one like, they're in the surgical, theater, and there's, like they say there's, like, urine and feces and, like, spinal fluid all over the floor, and I'm just like, "God," like, that's Like that's not very Star Warsy, but interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, it definitely takes a much darker approach than a lot of what we've looked at
Hmm.
recently.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I mean,
you get a lot of the dark
usually,
humor from
yeah,
surgeons as well.
yeah. But they do kind of take away from that a little bit with some of Barris's feats of the Force. Like,
Yeah,
there's one part where they work really hard to replace an officer's heart, and he almost dies of an infection, but Barris comes through and saves him at the last minute. Basically, you know what I mean?
yeah,
It kind of takes away from it a little bit, but
yeah. There's a few things she does that kind of like puts the faith in the Force and the rest of the medical crew. Like there's the one where the entire nervous system was shot, I think it
yeah,
was, and she fixes that. She also helps someone who I think I forget what 914's problem was, but it was like a seemed like a blood pressure thing, or
yeah.
there was
Oh yeah, he was the one who couldn't stand up,
yeah,
right?
and he
Yeah.
was the clone that kind of uh changes Joss's mind on how clones
Mhm.
work because
Yeah.
it was his brood brother, his vat brother, whatever, that was 915 who
Yeah.
died. He asked how he was. 914 asked how he'd done to Barris, and then that's when Joss was like, "Yeah, he's dead."
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
he doesn't understand why this was
Has
a
no
gross thing to
tact at
do.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but he's
He's
still
just
thinking of them as just droids,
yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I guess yeah, it's an interesting one thing that like I kind of was interested in is how the book medicine in Star Wars differs from medicine in real life. I mean, obviously like, on Coruscant you just get your whole body replaced, but when you're out here it's a lot more similar to I guess real world medicine with a few differences. Like one thing I noticed is they've got like they use fields a lot. Like you don't need to have showers. You don't need to like wash your hands. You can go through a sterile field or like
Yeah,
a sonic burst to clean your skin off or whatever. I thought that was pretty like interesting, um, and I guess sort of realistic like
yeah. I
iteration of like what real medicine is like.
I do like how that was brought up as well. Uh,
Hmm.
because it wasn't just introduced as like, hey, look at this weird, cool Star Wars tech. It was
Yeah,
used to kind of reinforce the themes of the book, where
yeah,
we hear about how the sterile fields work when Joss is explaining why he doesn't use them because he's sterilizing
yeah.
his hands the old-fashioned way
Hmm.
because of tradition and all that, and how his family of surgeons does it. So,
I do kind of
uh,
have a bit of a problem with that though too as well because Star Wars does the same thing, like, with lots of stuff. So the Star Wars Expanded Universe, it basically just takes things that we know and does it the exact same way. Like, the doctor scrubbing their hands before going into the operating theater is, like, been in every medical show ever, Like, it's a
yeah,
very kind of iconic thing. Like, it's the same with, like, whenever there's a law scene in Star Wars, it's lawyers, 2 lawyers and a judge. It's the exact same as in the real world. When, like, in the movies, when something like that happens, you get BACTA, you know?
yeah,
Or, like, if Star Wars ever had if one of the movies ever had a criminal, like a trial, it would be something Star Warsy. It wouldn't just be like Space Court, Just like
yeah.
I
That's
think
fair.
if there was a movie about this, it wouldn't be Space Mash, even though I like Space Mash, it would have been like the doctors, their job is mostly to support the droids or something. Like I'm just spitballing, but instead, with the book, it basically takes. You could set the vast majority of this in the real world without changing very much at all.
Yeah, they do kind of try to address that with like the equipment shortages and everything.
Yeah,
But then the question is like, would they actually have more real surgeons than medical droids? So
exactly. Yeah, like how is it cheaper to keep a surgeon there? Um, but yeah, they because it almost parts of the book. I mean, I'm sure this is from a layperson's perspective. I know like a couple of doctors, and I wonder if they're reading this just being like, oh, this is all so stupid.
Yeah, they don't go too in depth on how a lot of the actual medical stuff works, which I appreciated because it would have been
Yeah.
painful even for people who didn't understand
Yeah.
medicine. But
It's
yeah,
basically just included as like to give it a bit of almost like authority. Like you throw a couple words in there that like
yeah.
we don't really understand without googling. It's like okay.
Is there anything? No, I thought I might have had something written down related to that, but I didn't. So I don't know what I was going to mention.
Yeah. Well,
But
because we don't even Bacta, we hardly see Bacta. It's like when someone gets injured, they're like in the tank for 10 minutes, um, which I thought is interesting. Star Wars books always kind of do that as well. Like whenever real shit's going down, it's like you're in the Bacta for an hour, and then you're
yeah,
out.
but if their like limbs are exploded and they're bleeding out, like there clearly is some prep work that goes into that.
Yeah.
Like when Padme was giving birth, they didn't just like chuck her in the back to tank and float on out, babies.
Natural birth, water birth.
It seems she has lost the will to live. I've poured 10 ounces of Bacta down her throat, and all she's done is choke.
um, oh, what was I gonna say? Yeah, I completely forget now. But in like Wraith Squadron, I think Piggy's in there for like a month at one, or like a few weeks at one point, or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
But he'd only gotten like stabbed a bunch and shot a bit or something, so
yeah.
it's fine.
Oh, I remember what it was. The idea too that they're on this planet that's like filled with like natural medical resources that they're not allowed to use. It's kind of interesting. Even when like they can literally go pick like some and use it, and Zan does at one point because
Yeah.
to treat an infection.
Yeah, I was kind of not sure like what the boat is being used for then, like why it's militarily important if they're not using it on their military. If like the
They're using
clone
it on more
troopers,
important military somewhere, I guess, is
I
like
yeah, like are they shipping it all off to like
the
Megiddo or
front line, I guess.
something?
Yeah, Bara. Yeah,
Wouldn't it be better to like just use it and make sure that this base is fine and then you can control the whole thing? But
yeah, you'd think so.
or at least some of it. Like I
Yeah,
get wanting to ship off some of it, but like
yeah,
maybe they were
or even
supposed to,
most
and
of
then
it.
Blade
But
was just like the only reason they were
that's
leaving
possible.
is he wanted that for himself.
That is possible.
But actually, that kind of brings up the uh, one of the next points was the uh, Foji's attack on the three mercenaries,
Hmm.
where the new martial arts instructor that we mentioned, he ends up. Den gets uh, a droid's photoreceptor or whatever, a recording from a droid that had been
Hmm.
recovered by a local harvester,
Hmm.
where it showed Foji uh, just murdering some mercenaries in cold blood
Right.
with his bare hands. But right before that, there was a scene with the spy where the spy was talking about how it was time to make a villain.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, I don't know if it was explicitly mentioned anywhere, but
Yeah.
my
I didn't even
takeaway
really think about that.
there was that the spy had kind of set that up, like not set it up, like clearly Foji did that, but the
Mhm.
spy was the one who orchestrated that and sent the film to Den.
Yeah. No, because it doesn't explain it how he got it, and I don't imagine he'd be, out on the front lines. Like, I mean,
Well, he
maybe he would
mentioned
be.
that he got it from like a just basically a farmer out in the fields, a Boda farmer
Okay.
or
Yeah,
something.
I forgot that.
But like, I don't know if it was a thing uh, where the spy. I keep almost saying, where the spy set that up in some way because it sort of tied into what they were doing, unless I just missed something else that they were doing. But that was kind of
Yeah.
my
Oh, my Audacity just
takeaway there.
crashed.
Oh, well, it lasted an hour.
Damn, I felt it happen too. I literally felt it happen in the computer. Hiccuped. Like, oh,
That's
there
rough.
she goes. Yeah.
Mine's been fine every time. I don't know what you're.
Um. Yeah. Should we just? What do you think we should do?
You want to restart the Audacity recording?
I could try. I could try.
We can just count back. Do you know, or Did it save it all? Actually, mine's Yep.
Okay.
I think mine's crashing when I press stop.
All right. Let's just
we'll just use the video recordings.
Yikes.
Oh wait, no, mine actually worked.
Oh, okay, hold on. Maybe I can save mine. There'll be like a minute of missing audio, but let me just.
Well, you haven't cut out on mine at all, so from the video recording, I can just send the audio version of that, and it'll at least be separate tracks, so it should be fine.
Okay. Sorry about this, YouTube. Let me just. All right, let me know when you're ready, and we'll 3, 2, 1, go again.
We'll just use the video recording.
Oh, okay. Just use the video recording. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Your I should tell you, your voice is super low again. I was gonna just let that go.
Is it good now, or is it still?
Yeah, it's good.
I mean, it was good before.
I'm not sure if you're faking that.
No,
or...
I just faked that. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point, though. I didn't really think about that. I guess I read this book in one sitting, by the way. I was like, okay, it was last night. I was like, okay, I'll read half tonight, half tomorrow, and I just crushed the whole thing.
Yeah. It's a
good. I guess it's not that long, but
yeah, I think it's the shortest one we've read so far.
You can usually tell by at which point because I got like the e-version, so I can always tell at which percentage the stories start. Like how the legend stuff has like the excerpts from other books.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this one was at 66.
Damn.
Some have been at like 75. If it's at 66, it means it's shorter because it's always like the same amount of excerpted text.
Yeah. The X-Wing books were really weird for that because it would like the ones I was using because I read most of it on ebook stuff, but it like cut weirdly into the next book. There was the first 100 pages or something. So I kept being afraid that I was super behind. But either way,
I always checked before I started because I'm like, if a book's like 70, I'll try to do like, ideally I do it over like 4 days, 20, 20, 20, and 10. But really I'll do it like 40, 20, 10 or whatever.
Yeah, so even though the intention, if my theory was correct, was that the Den would be able to use the tape of Foji and make him into a villain, the Republic started spinning it as a Republic hero for killing those mercenaries, so that was nice.
Yeah. And he's just like Den is just like not impressed. Not surprised. He's not surprised, but he's not impressed.
Yeah, they're all pretty disappointed by it, but
yeah, they're all like sitting around like,
this is kind of how war is, and it's kind of gross.
Yeah.
But Den is also hoping he'll be able to bring down Philba, and he gets close. But we already mentioned how Blade kind of gets Philba gets killed and Blade gets implicated. So when Den is about to go public with it, he kind of learned that actually Blade is part of the thing and he needs to go deeper. But then Blade dies too. So poor Den. He's not going to get much of a story out of this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, he might have got at least paid for... Well, and he gets a video at the end, but he might have at least gotten paid for... Even if the Republic...
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Sorry about that, everyone. There was some technical difficulties there with the stream, so we're recording the rest of this offline. And
what a disaster. Sad.
Super sad. So we're going to finish off the episode this way. And I'm going to...
It's a little cozier.
I'm going to donate to Justin's Patreon so we can afford some better internet. Get off that dial-up.
Corey.
What?
My Patreon's paused right now.
Oh, I'm
not offering any new rewards. So I can't take people's money in good conscience.
Right, I'm gonna super chat every month so that Justin can afford some new internet.
That would be helpful.
But yeah, so we've got we were talking about Dender's news reporting, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and basically how everyone got a little more jaded after what's his name vows, and nothing bad happens to him, only good things
Yeah.
until he kills himself.
Well, it you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there's not a I don't know what I just typed in the notes because my phone thought I was typing something there. That's the downside of doing the notes on my phone.
Yep.
There may be some random words you see in the notes right now, Justin.
That's okay.
So don't worry about
I
that.
don't mind. That's special. Oh yeah, I see it.
What did I do?
I don't know if that was just a mistake or.
Anyways, yeah. So there's not too much else to Den's story.
No.
He has his multiple failed attempts at news stories. He has way too much access, or way more access than you'd think he'd have, having just met these people.
Yeah.
But we get around this point to Joss and Tolk's relationship, where he kind of notices her on the Corin meter for the first time after.
She seems pretty high in the Corin meter as well.
Does she?
Yeah. He said, doesn't he say anybody with one eye could notice that she was stunning or something?
I forgot about that. I don't know.
There's a lot of sexuality in this book too.
Yeah, he's almost as thirsty as Corin is. Not quite, but almost.
I disagree. I think he's more thirsty than Corin.
Actually, yeah, there's only 2 female characters.
He's being blue balled, so like,
but
she's like, yeah, she's. It's like there's like nudity in this book, which is pretty strange for Star Wars.
Yeah. I guess she decided that she's into him around the same time that he decided he's into her, and she like doesn't lock the shower door so that he can get in, and that's a risky move because this is a whole base of people. So
yeah.
I don't know what the strategy there was, but I'm gonna say that was a risky play.
Yeah, it was risky. And then he has to take like a cold shower afterwards, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, well, he was going to take a shower anyways, but he just changed the temperature a little bit.
Usually he just uses like the sonic feature, and he's like, I had to use cold water. It's like, that's a little on the nose maybe, but it was funny.
But they have a confrontation where he's like, what are you doing? I can't do this, and she gets pissed off at him.
She's basically like, but can't you? He's like, no. She's like, fine.
No. He talks to Chloe though, and Merritt kind of puts him straight. He's like, well, that's when we get the line of like, is that your traditions or your family's? And eventually, I think it's after the climax of the book when they're doing their relocation, Zan dies in the shuttle happenings, and he finally
like a piece of glass through his eye.
Yeah, it just kills him in the middle of him being happy that Dan saved his musical instrument.
Yeah.
And he's just dead. Joss and Tol cook up, and that's kind of how the book ends.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's your favorite character, by the way? Who do you think has besides Joss? Who else? Like, or maybe not besides Joss. Who's your favorite character? Like, who did you most enjoy the perspective of?
I5 is definitely the best one.
Oh, right. Yeah. We didn't really talk about him. Do you want to give like a brief?
I think we just got a little bit with him, and the Foji plot are the only things we really gotta resolve there. So do you want to do I5 first, or do you want to do Foji's last stand?
How about you do I5, because you probably know his history better than I do.
All right. Well, his history is kind of a mess. He doesn't really know what's going on with himself, but he's got a lot of modifications and a lot of memory gaps. So he's not sure exactly where he came from with a lot of things. He knows that he was emancipated by one of his old owners, and it seems like he did something heroic at some point that resulted in some damage that hadn't been fully repaired, and he's trying to kind of figure out what that is. He's got a pretty bad opinion of humans.
Yeah.
Or a low opinion, or is confused by them rather. But
At
he,
least compared to how droids would.
yeah,
Like the war and stuff. Like droids wouldn't play that shit. Well, they might. He
yeah,
doesn't think they would.
he kind of just like when he shows up, it's clear that he's annoyed by the duties he's doing, and
Yeah.
everyone's kind of like, "What's his deal?"
Yeah.
But he becomes another foil for Joss's ideas of like what identity is and who they all are.
Mhm.
Because when Joss is talking about how the clones are just biological machines, then you have this other machine here who is
A
arguably
machine.
fairly, yeah,
Yeah.
who's fairly human himself. And they even ask him at one point if he considers himself human.
Yeah.
And I5 kind of goes into a bit of what that actually means, and uh, even says stuff like, well, humans, you can call them brave in a way that doesn't really apply to some other species, because some of the humans will like know they're in danger and still do something, whereas
Mhm.
some other
Right.
species are just like, they don't have
They're
fear in
just
the
like
first
bred
place,
to
so they don't really understand what they're doing.
yeah. It's like despite of fear, they still act. It's
Yeah,
like the Trandoshan, I think, is
yeah,
the
the
yeah.
example they give there, yeah.
Yeah.
uh so he helps in the operating theater. He starts gaining some of his memories back and some of his capabilities back, and like two or three of them just show up in the last bit of the
Yeah, like
book.
he's got a laser, doesn't he?
Yeah,
From his hand, is it?
something like a hand laser, and I think something else. Then he like vibrates rain off of him and everyone around him.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's like kind of like the showers basically.
yeah,
Because
and
what's his name? Zan can hear it because
yeah,
yeah.
but that was kind of what goes on with him, and then the shuttle crash breaks him again, so it stops his progress. We'll probably find
Oh
out more
yeah,
about him
right.
in the next
Yeah.
book, but that kind of goes
But
over.
most of his backstory is from is it Shadowhunter? Um, because all the backstory that he talks about is from other books. Like
Oh
his
yeah,
like
I
he
I never
ran
read
into
those.
Darth Maul is the Zabrak he's talking about.
Okay,
Yeah, like when he talks about like a Zabrak, like a it's Darth Maul he's referring to.
okay, so that'll be something we get to talk about later.
Yeah, let me just because I read some of those books um, when I was a kid. But I can't like it all just kind of right because his master was murdered because his master is Lorne Pavin and he was murdered by Darth Maul.
Hmm.
That's what Star Wars. I can't remember which book that is. It is yeah, Shadowhunter. Okay, I was right.
I think
But
that might be
then we also
one
see the
where my
character in the
copy is lost in the
Coruscant.
mail.
Yeah,
Very sad.
yeah. That's an old one. That's like 2000. That's like right after Phantom Menace, I think.
Hmm.
And then there's like I think some of these characters are in the Coruscant Knights books as well.
Hmm.
Um, so we'll see more of them. I actually was reading. People recommend you read Shadowhunter beforehand, but I don't really feel like I'm missing out on much. Not
Yeah,
remembering everything perfectly.
yeah, it kind of helps with the character, I feel like.
Hmm. I can't remember what it is he's stealing because he's stealing something. I think it's because I'm pretty sure there's also a reference to it in Plagueis. Remember?
Yeah,
Is it a holocron? Maybe.
I
I
don't
think it
remember.
might be. I think it's a holocron, but because in Plagueis, remember when they're at like the party on the Skyhook or whatever,
Hmm.
and Darth Maul comes to meet Plagueis and Palpatine, and he's got I think it's a holocron he's got. I'm pretty sure that's the events. Like the three stories are kind of connected that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably try to find that because
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
But OG, so his last thing was just
Right. So he
with Barriss.
yeah, because he suffers I forget what kind of mortal wound he suffers, but basically Barriss heals him.
I think he gets hit by a dart from behind
Yeah,
when
right,
Barriss is
right.
going to confront him,
Yeah.
and like she thinks she's gonna, or she's trying to decide whether to kill him or not
Yeah,
because she's
and
confronting him
she
about
doesn't
the
have to.
three murders.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he gets attacked, and then she saves his life instead. And I kind of
Yeah.
thought I was misreading it at some point because you get the like he sends a recording to Den and to Barriss, of him like
Yeah,
blowing
so
up.
did I. I thought it was fake or something. I
Yeah,
was
like
like,
no, but wait, Barris just saved him. So what are we looking at here? Like no,
yeah, there's like
he.
a time jump that doesn't kind of not implied in the book.
Yeah, it's only probably like a couple hours or something, but he's so upset that Barris saved him that he just goes and blows himself up to show how
In a
tough he
very,
was.
very violent, very explosive death. He must kill like a dozen or more
Yeah,
beings, um, and droids as well. Because it's like he killed 4 of them, then 8 more jumped down. It's like
yeah, they
Jesus.
like rolled out a thermal detonator, smiled at the camera, and blew up. And
Yeah,
had given
that was a little weird.
instructions before, so he like had planned all this.
Yeah, and then Den's like, well, I could probably sell this and make a bunch of money.
Yeah. Uh,
um, I think one of the main kind of themes in this book is like the difference between warriors and healers, or not warriors and healers, but like fundamentally violent people and fundamentally not violent people.
yeah,
Like Zan and Joss are not, yet basically everyone bad in this book. It's not like just that they are violent. It's just that it's also that they tend to enjoy violence. There's like a
yeah.
difference between a soldier and like not necessarily like I guess a warrior is what they say in the book, but like
Hmm.
and Barris is kind of like figuring out which side she's on because although she knows that like there's no reason for her to be striking out at foe, she trips him at one point basically to try to embarrass him. And she thinks about killing him. It's kind of like the main themes of the Star Wars saga on like a kind of a micro scale. It's like,
Yeah,
are you going to be a violent person or a non-violent person? Like, and the people who are violent, they don't think about like it's not like an option to be nonviolent.
hmm,
It's not like something that they have to think about doing. Just like characters like Joss, he never struggles with being violent. I mean, I guess he's got
yeah,
no reason to, but like he never thinks about trying to kill anybody. Den doesn't either. When like he's got a hate on the hut, he could have poisoned him if he wanted to. And Barris is like right in the middle,
yeah,
kind of leaning back and forth.
yeah. I didn't really, I didn't really consider that, but yeah, that's
It's kind of like I don't know. That's just kind of what I felt like when I was reading the whole book. But
yeah. No, that definitely makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And it kind
That was
of does fit into the
interesting.
whole identity
Mhm.
discussion.
Totally.
Well, we lost the chat and we didn't have any emails, so there's not really many questions. So, unless is there anything else you want to talk about before we get into the rankings?
Um, this book kind of, like, touches on the limits of force healing, and there's been some pretty wacky, force healing like, it's been portrayed in some pretty different ways.
Hmm.
Can you think of any that are really interesting? Like, in the early books, like, we talked a bit in Bakura and also, I guess, Courtship a bit. Luke is always kind of, like, taking like little healing naps. Later on, we see some pretty incredible recoveries through force healing.
Yeah,
In this one, it's like even she isn't sure of her power because she says like, yeah, I can bolster the immune system, but I can't close a cut, for example.
yeah. Like,
Um,
she does something similar to what Luke does in Truce of Bakura with the like restoring the nervous system
mhm.
and stuff, and she
Yeah,
kind of senses the like physical stuff that gets shoved into people. Like, there's a lot of slivers that get into places they shouldn't
yeah,
be, and that's
yeah,
kind of something she's good at.
yeah.
But then you get like Silgal in other books where, especially with the Mon Mothma stuff, where she's like
Right. Yeah.
focusing
She
on
can do
the
anything
individual
with
atoms.
enough
She's
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
her and Tackley just end up with a lab of miraculous
Yeah.
cures in medical science later on.
Yeah. I mean, Luke has some stuff like that too in Fate of the Jedi, where he like kind of kicks Abeloth out of people, like, when she
Yeah,
starts to he, like, kinda talks about, like, going in and, um, yeah, basically just, like but even in this, she talks about, like she does, like, kind of sense things on an atomic level too, because she talks about, like, quarks at one point or something, when
yeah,
she's, like, sensing the droid. Uh, that's like, I th excuse me, I thought the droid was the spy until Barriss took a look at him, because she sensed him and I don't think there was really
mm.
anything weird there.
Well, wasn't it also
So
partially that because he was a droid, she couldn't really discern anything from the Force, and then she would like she kind of noticed the same thing that Joss did
yeah,
earlier, where I5 was able to use his eyes in a way that droids normally didn't, to emphasize what he was feeling or what he was thinking.
Yeah, my theory was that it was a living being shape-shifting into a droid. Like, my theory was that so she would have if
Right,
my
so
theory
that's
was
why
right,
they were
she would have sensed
right.
him. Yeah,
Okay, I see.
but I gave up on that one pretty quickly.
All right, so do you want to place this in your rankings?
Oh,
Are
it's
we ready
hard. I
to move
really,
on
really
there?
liked this book. Yeah, I think
Actually,
I'm
I'll
ready
read
to move
out
on.
your rankings first, and then
Yeah, that's a good idea.
So right now you have in first place you have Plagueis, Rogue Squadron, Back to War. I'm reading them sequentially. These aren't all in first place. Back to War, then Wedge's Gamble, Iron Fist, Courtship, Wraith Squadron, Solo Command, Truce at Bakura, Krytos Trap. And mine are Plagueis, Iron Fist, Wraith Squadron, Back to War, Rogue Squadron, Solo Command, Wedge's Gamble, Courtship of Princess Leia, Truce at Bakura, and Krytos Trap. We should probably post these somewhere because this is going to get cumbersome to read out every time. Maybe I'll make another scene for OBS and put it up, but either way, where are you thinking?
Oh, it's hard. I really, really like this one. It's the first one that I read in one sitting. It's definitely the top half of the list. It's above Iron Fist. I'd probably put this maybe right under Back to War. I think I'd put this number 4. So
Right.
Plagueis, Rogue Squadron, Back to War, and then this book. I liked it a lot more than I thought I would, to be honest. I like how small scale it is. It's very unique compared to the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah, like it does stuff very differently than a lot of other Star Wars books, which can definitely work in its favor, but could also it's not the kind of book that I'd probably recommend as someone's first foray into the EU.
No, I agree.
I do think that Courtship or even Truce of Bakura works better for that, and then for people who are like super into it, then Plagueis is probably better for that. But I think I'm actually going to put it second. So
Nice.
between Plagueis and Iron Fist for me.
I think it's a very fair call. It's a great book. I don't know if I'm gonna like the second one as much, but I know nothing about it, so it's kind of refreshing. I
Yeah.
can't remember the last time I didn't know anything about in a Legends book, how it's gonna end up.
I remembered bits of this one. I don't remember much from the second one, and I do think one of the things that works for this one, with how it's set up, is that it's not a very plot heavy book.
No, it's not.
So it does set up a lot though that kind of needs to get paid off in the next book. So my expectation is that it's going to be a lot plot heavier, and it may not work as well. So we'll see how that plays out. But
just based on the title too, it seems like the next book maybe more Bariss focused. And I really enjoyed the Surgeon, so that will be a bit of a bummer for me. But I'm gonna go in open-minded.
Yeah, so that will be Thursday, November 7th, I believe, is our next episode. We did shift the schedule around so that Halloween would not end up being an episode, because that would have been a bit much.
Spooky.
Yeah. I'm going to be cowering under my covers all night, so I told Justin, I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, he said I can't do it.
But, yeah.
And then it's Thrawn, right? And then we're on to Thrawn, I think?
Yeah, then we're moving on to the Thrawn trilogy, which I've never read before, so I'm really looking forward.
No, I've heard it's good.
So yeah, that'll be the 7th and then the 21st.
All right. Look forward to sitting down with something tasty and reading about guts and talking about it 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. Should be a disappointment.
Wow. Okay, just never mind, guys. Just unsubscribe from this podcast, I guess.
Yeah, well, I like to underpromise, overdeliver.
Okay, fair.
Lower your expectations.
That's kind of what MedStar did to me, so.
Yeah, so also let us know how you feel about any of the format changes as well. We're going to keep trying to refine them.
I think this book was a good step forward.
Yeah.
Besides for the chat issues.
Yeah, who could expect that when you're using dial-up in 2019 it would have issues?
People are going to believe you, Corey.
Well, thank you for joining me, my furry co-host, Mr. EckhartsLadder.
Oh my god. It's a meme. I'm not a furry. Goodbye, everyone.
Good night.